everybody, welcome back to the Cupcake Jemma channel with me, Sally, and I'm just about to have my breakfast. Kidding! I have got this toast because today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a cinnamon toast layer cake. Cinnamon toast is one of my all-time favorite Crumbs and Doilies cupcake flavors. Pretty sure there's a recipe for that on the channel. It's like an OG. We have literally been doing it for years, and so I thought surely this is going to make an amazing layer cake. Now I'm making toast because we're actually going to be putting toast into the cake, obviously because it's going to be toast flavored. But what we need to do is just dry this bread out, because even once we've toasted it, so I've kind of just lightly browned some wholemeal. This is just like really like cheap wholemeal bread. Even when it's toasted, it's still a bit kind of chewy and bendy, and we want this to be super duper dry. So we're going to dry it out in the oven, but before we do that, I am going to just put an obscene amount of butter on it, and I'm buttering both sides so that when it dries out in the oven, all the butter is going to really seep into the toast, and it's just going to be absolutely delicious. It's going to give you kind of fried bread vibes. So once both sides of all of the toast has been buttered, we're going to pop this in the oven. Now it's at 170 degrees C, and I'm going to put it in for kind of 10 to 15 minutes until this is completely dried out. What we want is for the bread to snap in half and then not to be kind of any chewy resistance. Once it's baked, we're just going to leave it to cool down completely. And once our toast has completely cooled down, we're going to whiz it up in the food processor, and I'm going to try not to eat this because this is so delicious. Now on with the lid, and I'm just going to do a few pulses until it's nice and breadcrumby. So that's our toast crumbs made. They're nice and cool, which means they're ready to go into our sponge. And that is what we're going to start with. But I'm going to go into the studio because there's more space and it's pretty. So the next thing that we're going to prepare is some cinnamon sugar, because each layer of sponge is going to have a layer of cinnamon sugar baked into it. So it's going to look really, really cool when it's cut. Now in this little bowl, I've got 3 tablespoons of caster sugar, and I'm going to add to it 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and then simply mix those two together so that it's all one color. Sorry, it's a bit of a scratchy sound. There we go, and that is ready for later. And now we're nearly ready to mix, but I'm just gonna get my tins ready, of course. I'm gonna be baking just a 3-layer cake today, and they're gonna be 7 inches each. If I remember, I'll give you another option for a different size cake as well in the description box below. And now let's get baking. So soft unsalted butter. It's got to be soft and spreadable, remember, because it's got to whip up. So I've got 310 grams going into the bowl of my stand mixer here. If you don't have a stand mixer, you just want to get yourselves one of those electric hand mixy whizzy things. And then we're also going to add in 310 grams of caster sugar. You can use granulated sugar as well. Caster is just better because it dissolves quicker. Right, so let's get that mixing on a high speed for about 4 minutes, but what you're looking for is for this mixture to be really pale in color, and it will have kind of doubled maybe in volume. Now we're going to start adding some eggs. So I've got 5 large free-range eggs here. I'm going to add them one at a time and just keep on mixing on a really high speed to incorporate each egg one at a time. And now we're going to add our flour and our breadcrumbs. So I've got 250 grams of self-raising flour, and I'm going to add in 60 grams of our buttery toasty breadcrumbs. Once we've added this to our mixer, I'm just going to mix it on the very lowest speed because we only want to fold this in. We don't want to knock out any of that air that we've just created. Once it's just combined, we're going to finish it off with 3.5 tablespoons of whole milk and about 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, just to add a little vanilla-y hint. So that is our batter made. It's looking really light, really fluffy. There's a lot of it because we've got so much air in there. Just scraping my paddle. And before we put it in our tins, I'm just going to scrape around the bowl and at the bottom. And I do this throughout mixing the batter as well, because sometimes it doesn't really kind of catch everything in this. Now it is time to put the batter into the tins, but remember, we're gonna add that layer of cinnamon sugar in the middle of each one. So we're gonna add just a small amount of batter first, and if you wanna do it precisely, it's gonna be around 200 grams. So start by measuring in 200 grams of the batter into each tin, and then use your offset palette knife just to smooth these out and make them nice and flat. Then you're going to take 1 tablespoon of your cinnamon sugar and sprinkle it over the top of each batter. You can give it a little shimmy just to make sure that it's completely covered evenly, and then we're going to put the remaining batter on top, and again it's going to be around 200 grams in each tin. Blob it into the center and then use the offset palette knife again just to even the batter out. So now it is time to bake these, and we've got the oven preheated to 170 degrees C, which is fan assisted, hang on. And they're gonna go in for kind of 22 to 24 minutes. I know that this oven takes 24 minutes, but just make sure that you test each sponge with a skewer to make sure that it comes out completely clean. Whilst it's baking, we're gonna make our buttercream. So we're just gonna make a very simple cinnamon buttercream, starting with 350 grams of very soft unsalted butter. Whee! Look at that. Can you see it? I can bring it closer to you. So white. You almost wouldn't even think that that was butter. It looks more like kind of whipped cream. Ha, it's butter, let me tell you. Anyway, now it is time to add some icing sugar. So in total I've got 675 grams, which I've already sifted, and I'm gonna start by adding half of it in, and I'm gonna do my usual new trick of just stirring it in a little bit until it's incorporated into the butter, and then we'll get it back on the mixer and we'll whip it up again on a high speed for another 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll do the same thing with the remaining icing sugar. So this has had maybe almost 10 minutes of mixing so far. It looks really lovely and fluffy, but it's a little bit on the stiff side. So we're just gonna loosen it up with some whole milk. I'm gonna start by adding 2 tablespoons, and then later on, we'll just make sure that it is soft enough and we can always add a little bit more. And now it's obviously time to add some cinnamon. So again, it's kind of up to you how much you put in. I'm gonna go with a ½ teaspoon, but again, like the milk, once we've mixed this up, I'm gonna taste it. If you want to add more, then just go ahead and add more. And finally, a little pinch of salt, maybe even like just less than a ¼ teaspoon, because the salt is actually really nice in this flavor. The cinnamon toast, it kind of works with a bit of salt. So we're going to give this a final whip up, and then once it's done, I'm going to pop it into a bowl and keep it covered until our cakes are cooled down and we can get decorating. Oh. It looks really cool too. I like all the little flecks. Look. Very cool. Nice, 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 nice. Okay, the cakes have cooled down and I've trimmed the tops of them off using my leveler just to make sure that they're flat to begin with. A flat cake to begin with is going to give us a nice straight sharp cake in the end. Now I'm going to grab my buttercream here and just give it a little mix, because sometimes when it sits around it can get lots of air bubbles in it, so we want to make sure that it's smooth before we start. So take a little bit of this cinnamon buttercream and dollop it in the middle of your cake board, and we'll just spread that around. I'm using the crank palette knife again because we're going to get so much control with this little guy. So then I'm going to grab my first layer of sponge and pop it in the middle of the board. I'm just going to give it a little spin and make sure I'm happy with the position, and then we'll push it down to make sure that it doesn't fly all over the place. So let's get icing. We're going to fill with our buttercream. Now I like to take a nice large amount of buttercream, which might be too much, but it's easier to take it off once we've put it on than to add a little bit at a time. I'm going to show you what happens if you just take a little bit of buttercream and spread it into your cake. What you'll find is that you just drag up loads of crumbs like this. So instead, I like to take a big, massive amount of icing and then use the palette knife to push it into position, making sure that we cover the whole area, and we want it to kind of come out the sides like this. And just smooth it out, and then if you think there's too much, then you can easily just remove a little bit. But I like a lot of icing, so he's going back in. So once I've leveled it out, I'm then going to grab some of our buttery toasty crumbs, and we're going to sprinkle these all over that layer of icing. Try to contain it just a little bit so that we don't get too many crumbs in the outside icing and they'll drag through. Anyway, it's not the end of the world if that happens. Now we're just going to do the exact same thing on top of the second layer of sponge. So just turn the top layer over because this underneath side is going to be much easier to ice, and we're going to give this a crumb coat. So I'm going to use my nice big palette knife to do this, but if you've not done it many times before, then this one is going to be a lot easier to control. But I like this one because you can pick up loads of icing and get the job done nice and quickly. So I'm just starting on the side of my cake, and I'm just grabbing loads of buttercream, putting it into the cake and smushing it backwards and forwards. I'm not trying to make this smooth, I'm just trying to get the cake completely covered, and then we'll make it smooth afterwards. Once the sides are covered, I'm going to switch back to my little cranked palette knife and cover the top in the same way that we did our filling. You just want to make sure that every single part of this cake is covered in icing, so there's no holes. And now I'm just going to grab my cake smoother to smooth out the icing and take off any of that kind of excess so that we don't have too much icing on for our crumb coat. Trying to keep my smoother nice and vertical the whole time so that our cake is also vertical and straight. And for the top, I'm going to hold my smoother as flat as I can and cut in those corners and smoothing out the top at the same time. And lastly, I'm just going to clean up my cake board with any remaining icing, just get rid of that, and then we're going to go into the fridge for about 20 to 30 minutes until the cake is firm to the touch. Okie dokie, the cake is nice and firm, which means we can now top coat it, and we can put a little bit of pressure into the sides of the cake without worrying about the cake kind of wobbling all over the place. So again, just giving my buttercream a good whip up to make sure it's really nice and soft before we get cracking. And I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did with the crumb coat. I'm going to use my big straight palette knife, and I'm going to get this icing on the sides and the top of the cake. And the same again with smoothing, using my cake smoother to start by smoothing the sides of the cake, keeping the smoother nice and straight to make sure that our cake stays nice and straight. And then we'll move on to the top by cutting in those corners and smoothing it off. And now it is ready to decorate. So I'm going to start with my cinnamon sugar, and I actually made quite a lot of cinnamon sugar here. Probably too much, but it's because we're going to coat the sides. Now, maybe you've seen us do like the piñata cake before, and we kind of do it by hand. Some people roll it, and I really want to try it, but I was too scared to do it today. So we're going to do it this way. It's going to be messy. I'm going to scoop up some of the cinnamon sugar in my hand. I'm going to start at the base of the cake, and I'm going to drag upwards. And don't worry, we're going to get rid of the excess sugar that falls off, but it's so cute. It looks kind of a little bit shimmery from the sugar. And I love that. It looks like cinnamon toast, I reckon. So I was right, it was quite messy, and I've cleaned up, and I'm going to make some more mess. So now I'm going to do the same kind of thing with the toasty crumbs, but I'm only going to push them around the base of the cake. And you'll need to press quite firmly to make sure that they stick, because obviously we've now put the sugar on, but we just want them to sit like this And we'll keep going around the cake till we've got a nice little band of buttery toasty crumbs. It's looking pretty cool so far. So now I have put the remaining buttercream into a piping bag with a closed star nozzle on the end. I'm just going to add some ruffles to the top of the cake. And then I'm going to fill the center of my cake with the remaining buttery toasty crumbs before finishing this super cute cake with these awesome little cinnamon cereal pieces that I saw in the supermarket and I could not resist them. So I'm going to pop these around the top of the cake as well as the sides. And you may need to push these in a little bit just to make sure they completely stick to the buttercream. Super duper cute. I love these little, they're not even toast, but I love these little bits of toast. I think they really finish it off. So all that's left to do is to cut it. So let's see what's going on inside this beautiful cake. I'll go for a big slice. Here she comes. Wow. How cool is that? Hang on, can you see this cinnamon line here and here and here? Those are the ones that we baked inside the sponge. That looks absolutely mega. I really want to have it standing up because it looks so cool. Wow, awesome. Well done, me. Or whoever it was. Yes! We've not eaten it yet. I might be retracting that. Oh, here we go. Oh my God. Majorly crunchy. I was slightly worried that it wouldn't be cinnamony enough because we didn't put cinnamon in the actual sponge, but it's really coming through, and maybe it would be too overpowering if we had. It's really lovely light cake, and the buttercream, it's like little clouds of cinnamony air. Have a go at making this. Let us know how you get on. Tag us on Instagram using hashtag Cupcake Jemma, hashtag crumbs and doilies. Maybe this could find its way onto the crumbs and doilies menu one day. Make sure you head over to C&D Soho because they quite often have cinnamon toast in there. Maybe you'll get lucky on the day that you come in, but they change the menu every week, so you know, I don't know what you're gonna do. Have another cupcake. Remember also, if you want to get the full kind of downloadable recipe with the ingredients along with the method, then you can join our bake club, which is at patreon.com/Cupcake Jemma. All the recipes that we've already done are on there. Every Thursday we upload the full recipe that we've done here on YouTube. So go there. You can come to one of my baking classes. Obviously, if you want to learn how to decorate or bake, head to bakingclasses.co.uk. I should know that, and you can come and hang out with me and decorate some cakes or bake some brownies or whatever it is we're doing that week. It's all too much. It's because there's this cake here and I just want to eat it. So, ta-da, love. See you next week, or it might not be me, but I'll see you soon.